Sal Khan, the founder of the Khan Academy, is a digital learning pioneer.
And you might be saying, wow, this is interesting. This is an equation that has two solutions.
And he's one of the three experts the school sleuth turned to during his investigation of the uses and misuses of technology in schools. Here's the first part of their conversation.
The question we ask everyone, and it's not a quiz, but you might flunk. What is blended learning?
So there are two types. People imagine there's physical learning, which we all grew up in a classroom, your peers, the teacher, the school. And then there's this online stuff. There's things where you can go to a web page and get videos and exercises. And sometimes people try to create a tension between the two, where they say, hey, is this Amazon.com versus Barnes & Noble's? And blended learning is like, no. It's not about that. It's about leveraging the best of both and blending them together so that you can leverage technology where technology is appropriate for students to get things on demand, to be able to get data, to get feedback in real time. But then that liberates the classroom to then think about higher order tasks, whether it's Socratic dialogue, whether it's projects, inquiry, whatever else.
So who's in charge?
The teacher's always in charge. I mean, at the end of the day, when I think about the technology tools, I view those, they're tools. If I have a traditional classroom, let's not even talk about blended learning. I mean, to some degree, traditional classrooms are a blend between the teacher and the textbook, where the textbook is a tool, it's a resource, it has information, students has problems for students, it has explanations, but it's the teacher who decides how that's going to be used in their particular context. So it's really, when we talk about blended learning, it's really about a kind of the leader of the classroom, who's the teacher, and hopefully the community of learners as well, thinking about, well, there's tools out there. It could be a textbook, it could be Khan Academy, it could be whatever else.
So what's the right blend?
The one thing that I've learned over the last 4 years, I guess ever since schools started using Khan Academy, is there is no right blend. We're still discovering how it's being used. We've seen classrooms use it fairly different ways, but for their context, it seemed to work out well. For example, some of them, they might have some part of class time, or they might have a period of the day, or they might do 1 day a week, where the students use a tool like Khan Academy, learn at their own pace, and they might have the students kind of working with each other. They group them together, they pair them up. The teacher might use some of the data to go and do focus interventions. But we've seen other ones where they use the tool for kind of the students do it at their own time, their own pace. It's not part of class time, but because all of that's happening at the student's own time and pace, class time is more for a Socratic dialogue. It's more for a project. It's engineering something.
But this is America, and we need a number. So someday will you figure out that the right blend is 70% teacher and 30% machine? Or?
Yeah, no, I guess this would be, to me, this would be like asking, if you're in a humanities seminar, let's put technology on, and you say, what's the right blend between the textbook and the professor? Should it be 70% reading and 20% Socratic dialogue? So I guess you could think of it that way. So actually, I just answered, I was going to use that as a rebuttal, but you're right, you can think of it that way. So I don't know what I think, once again, I think it's going to depend on the teacher and the context in which he or she and the students that they're working with. I could imagine college students, I can imagine graduate students. A lot of it could be, and once again, this isn't about technology. This is, if you have graduate students, you could say, go work on this problem for 2 months and come back to me. If you're working with kindergartners, you're going to say, hey, let's try this thing together for the next 10 minutes and then talk about it, right? So there's this huge spectrum of the degree of kind of personalization and autonomy you want to go down.
Now you just differentiate by age, graduate student, kindergarten. This idea of blending, will it be the same for each kid? Will it differ by child?
I could imagine so. I mean, if there's a child who, let's just pick an age. Let's say we're dealing with 10-year-olds, and there's a child who, for whatever circumstances he or she has kind of brought into the classroom, they seem to be a bit of an autodidact. You know, and it has, you know, even if outside of the classroom, they go to the bookstore, the library, they're reading books on their own, they're learning, they're really this kind of the self-learner. For that type of a student, I think the most valuable thing you could do for that student is say, okay, continue being an autodidact. That's a great skill. In fact, that's a skill we want all of our students to be able. That's the best skill to have, to be the ability to learn. But that's not your whole education. If you can do that on your own, when you come into the classroom, we can go deeper. We can do projects. We can have we can write a story. We can, whatever, we're going to have more hands-on experiential things.
And for the kid who's not the autodidact?
So for the kid who's not the autodidact, I think the most valuable thing that could happen is try to get them closer to being an autodidact. So get them to be more self-directed in terms of, okay, I'm your teacher, you're the student, let's sit down and set goals together. So what are your goals for the next week? What are your goals for the next 6 weeks? And then when they say them, hey, do you think that's realistic? Do you think that you can achieve them? Yes, they can. At the end of a week, at the end of 6 weeks, hey, did you achieve those goals? Why didn't you? Why didn't you? Why didn't you not? I see that you accessed this resource and that resource, but you didn't ask any peers for help, or you didn't go to that resource. Do you think that could have been helpful for you? And so to really start to mentor and guide that type of behavior, because the thing I always talk about is, algebra is nice and physics are nice and chemistry, like all of that stuff I obviously love all that stuff. But the most important thing, and this is what I would want for my own children, is I want by the time that they're adolescents, that they're young adults, they have that ability to take ownership of their learning, set their goals, look at the resources they have around them, look at their community, their mentors, their teachers, and think about how do I pull from them so that I can reach my goal? Because when they go into the 21st century careers or whatever everyone's talking about, that's what's going to be expected of them. It's not about, oh, you learned how to take a derivative when you're in 12th grade. You're going to take derivatives for the next 30 years. Or you learned this kind of accounting. You're going to do that. Everything changes every 2 years now. So it's all about learning the new thing, figuring out resources, peers, colleagues, managers, mentors, online resources. How do I take all of those things in so that I can reach my goals?
Your motive for this wholehearted embrace of blending learning, it's pretty clear.
I mean, the way the lens I always use is like, what do I want for my own kids? And if I want it for my own kids, well, that should be for all kids.